Welcome everyone to the Tableau Module 3 exercise. In this exercise, we're going to be going over a few of the concepts outlined in chapters 2 and 3 in the book. You'll notice this module is a little bit shorter, and that's because I'm letting you have some time on project number 1. So with that, let's get started. In this one, we're going to go back to that Gapminder file. So you notice we had 2 different tabs in that file and we only used one. So now is a good time to go back and use that. So first we're going to connect to it. We're going to connect to it in Excel. And I have to scroll a bit. Let's see, Gapminder, open. And so we're still going to start with that child mortality long tab. Drag it over. You noticed I upgraded to the new Tableau, the 2024 point, I think 4.2, let's see. 2.2, sorry. The only difference I've really seen so far that's noticeable is that this has some new graphics. So if you see anything new on my side, that's really the big thing. I just finally took the time to upgrade. I will always let you know if I see anything major. So now that I've got child mortality over here, I'm going to drag GDP per capita. And then I'm going to create my connection. So I need this to join where the year and the country are the same so that I can see the GDP and the child mortality rates for the country and the year at the same time. So I'm going to do, and actually I'm going to go back. Let's go back to child mortality. Let's go ahead and fix this year. So change year to date. And same thing on GDP. Year to date, just so we don't have to deal with that later. Now we can go back to this connection. And again, you see that a little alert that will tell us that it's not quite ready yet. So country equals country. And year equals year. And now we should be good to go. I'm also going to add a filter on this page. So we can do the filters within each sheet or within each dashboard, but we can also do it up here if I go up to add filter. And I'm going to do a year filter. So I'm just going to do this on one of the years. It doesn't matter which one you pick since they're connected. So I'm just going to pick one of those years. And I'm going to do 1960 to 2010. There we go. And now I've got my country, year, and then also GDP per capita and child mortality. So now I can go to my first worksheet and I'm going to call this reference line. So in this exercise, I'm just going to go over a few of the concepts laid out in the book. The book really laid out some great references on choosing an effective visual. And then what was the second one? I think it was avoiding clutter. Yes. So some really great elements on how to make essentially your visualizations more appealing, more accessible, and really stand the test of time so that when someone looks at it, they're always getting the same message that you were trying to lay out. So I wanted to make sure that you were able to get this in Tableau. So first we're going to create a scatter plot. So to do that, drag child mortality, this number, to rows. And then we're going to drag GDP to columns. And you see that it put this one dot here. That's because it's just adding up all of them. And what we really want is to show each country as one little dot. So we're going to put country to detail. And now this is still summing up all of the years together. So one kind of neat thing I'm going to show you now is if you drag year to pages. Remember, this is like pages in a book, so you can create kind of a flip book. And what's really neat is I'm going to put it on fast and then I'm going to hit play. And remember that video of Hans Rosling where he's showing how it's moving and countries are getting richer, they're getting healthier as time goes on? You've essentially just recreated that in just a few steps in Tableau, which is pretty amazing. Love that. Okay, so I'm going to put stop and go back to 1960. If you want to, you can just filter to just 1 year. I like to do pages so I can see how it looks over time. A few things on this screen. It has some nulls. You can just exclude any data that has nulls. That's just when we don't have the information. No problem at all. And then if you go to the Analytics tab, so that's over here on this Data tab, just click over here to Analytics. Now these are those reference lines. So on choosing an effective visual, that chapter, a lot of it was showing how you can make slight changes to visualizations to make them really pop. And some of them were showing things like average lines, reference lines, little bands to really show how they work. So I'm going to show you a couple of those. I'm going to start with average line. So if you take average line and just drag it to your screen, you can see it's got average of GDP and average of child mortality. Now you'll notice here, if I click play, that line is moving. So it's doing it over the course of all of the years. So like for each year that it's changing, and notice it's also changing up here. It's adjusting over time. If I format this, I can change the colors. I can change some of the stuff like that. So like I filled above the line is black. So you can kind of change the backgrounds of this. Undo that. Oh, I'm gonna hit stop as well. There we go. I can remove this line by just clicking remove. I can edit it and say I want different, maybe I want a constant, maybe I want to calculate it for all time or a certain year and I want it to stay at a certain point. So there's lots of different interesting things you can do there. So I'm going to remove it for a moment. Remove. I can also do a reference line. And you see up here, I can do a table. I'm going to put it on pane for a second so you can see what that does. And again, it brings up all these different options. So pane looks just like that. If I had done it with cell, same thing. That one really only comes into play if you're doing more of these bar charts where it would recalculate based off of like different categories or based on each cell, which reference line. And if I do like this, I could change it to only do it based on child mortality. And you see it changed it. Oops. The only bad thing is trying to click on them after you've created them. There we go. So that's a really nice way to just add a visual representation of what's going on in your data. So for example, if I didn't have this line, it might be difficult to see what was the average child mortality rate in this time. But with this line, it makes it much easier to see. Now, of course, in a scatter plot, it is a little bit easier than most data points, but in general, this Analytics tab allows you to add some interesting points. And one other quick thing I want to show you, let's remove this. There's also a cluster tool. You'll see more of this in, let's see, I'm trying to think of the first class you'll see it in, probably your predictive models class with me in the spring. This is showing a k-means clustering analysis, and it's actually clustering the countries based off child mortality and GDP per capita. So it's putting them into categories. So cluster one, these are the as of 1968, the poorer countries with the higher child mortality, the poorer countries with the lower child mortality, and then richer, healthier countries. And we can also change that. Edit clusters. We can do, let's do 5 different cluster groups, and I'll edit that more. We'll go into that in more detail in that class, but just kind of a neat thing that Tableau offers. I'm going to remove that. So yeah, that's the reference line tool. I am going to add this back, just so you see that. And then that's the 95% confidence interval. Okay, so now we're going to do some color callouts. That was another thing that was in the book that I really enjoyed. Specifically, if you go to page 45, you'll see actually both of these items, the average line and the color callouts, on one page. This is just another example of how you can tweak your visualizations just a little bit to make them more appealing and interesting. So I am going to show you how to first copy your worksheet. So you can just right-click and duplicate. And I'm going to rename this, let's call it color. And I'm actually going to remove this line. So one of the things I want to show you is how you can call out some of these dots based on the, let's do based on child mortality. So first we're going to create some calculated fields. Now, again, if you look on page 45, it's looking at, let's see, cost per mile by miles driven. And it's showing that, let's see, I think it's based on different cars. So some cars have a higher cost per mile, regardless of how many miles you drive. So I want to show basically which countries had a highest child mortality. So different colors based on this. Now we could try child mortality to color, but because this is a numeric variable and it's a measure, it's trying to do this, where it's this single color. Let's see, we can try to do something maybe like this. So you kind of get that where you're, above a certain point, it's a different color than others. But a different way to do this that makes it a little bit more effective is if you do calculated fields. So first, I'm going to show you one different method of creating a calculated field. So create calculated field. And we're going to create one that's the average of child mortality, and it's going to be a fixed calculation, which means it's going to be the average of child mortality over time, and I don't want it to change based off any of the filters. This is one you won't see as often, so I'm just giving you the formula. Let's call this average child mortality. And normally we would just do average child mortality, but in this case we're going to add fixed average. So all that does is it calculates the average and then makes it a fixed variable, so computes an aggregate using only the specified dimensions. This just allows us to do what we want to do next. So I'm going to click OK. And then we're going to create a basically in or out of group calculation. So create calculated field. We're going to call this above or below. And I want to color any country above that average child mortality a different color than any that are below. So if child mortality, let's say greater than or equal to average child mortality, then above, else below, end. So if that country's child mortality is above the average, then it's going to be above, otherwise it's going to be below. Now I can then drag above or below to color. And you see that I've now been able to change it where I'm calling out these that have the higher child mortality. And I can edit my colors. And this is the other little piece that I wanted to go over. There is a colorblind color palette in Tableau. Now, color blindness is a difficult one to deal with in visualization because a lot of us are not colorblind, so we don't know the different issues that people with color blindness might experience. The big thing to know is that red-green color blindness is one of the most common that you will see. So that's why the default colors in Tableau are not red and green, it's going to be blue and orange. That also means blue and orange, it's very difficult to understand in Tableau because since they're the default, they're just kind of randomly selected on which is blue and which one's orange. I always recommend changing this and making it very clear which one you're pointing out. So I make, say, below child mortality. Obviously, I'm pointing out which ones are above, which ones have higher child mortality rates. So I like making this one like a gray color, something that's kind of more blends into the background, something that shows that I'm not trying to call it out. And then I'll make this one that orange color. So that way you can see I'm really calling out these as they have the higher child mortality rates. And there we go. So we have done reference lines and we've done different color callouts. One last quick thing, annotations. If you right click on any point, you can annotate that mark, point, or area. So annotate. You can annotate with the tooltip. You can type your own, and we'll get into more tooltip tips later on in the term, but just know that that's how you can start pointing out some of these specific countries. With that, have a great week, and I will see you next time. Bye.